I'm starting a little bit with my own story, but hopefully it will have relevance to the story I've got to tell about the work we do. This is me and my daughter at 3 months. This is her at 6 months, and again at 12 months. This is my daughter and my youngest son sharing a book and her teaching him to read. This is my son drawing and starting with the first attempts at representing his ideas through drawing and writing. And what I'm really trying to show by these slides is that although my husband and I haven't made any formal attempts to teach our children to read and write, reading and writing has been part of their lives since they were little. They've grown up in a language-rich environment filled with books, with storytelling, with playing I Spy, and literacy is happening in our kitchen, in our car, and in every part of our daily lives. Researchers over the years have tried to quantify the hours of learning and about literacy that is happening in homes. And one researcher in the early 90s said that her son had been read to for half an hour a day from when he was 6 weeks, which amounted to about 1,000 to 1,700 hours of storybook reading. In addition, he was an American, he'd been watching Sesame Street, playing word games, lots and thousands more hours of interaction around print. She concluded that he would learn to read when he got to school because he learned to read already. In contrast, in another study done in the mid-1980s, Thiel and Saltzby estimated that in a home, in a low socioeconomic group, children might have had about 25 hours of storybook experience before starting school and about 200 hours of guidance about the form and function and the role of print in their lives. How does this translate into school outcomes? This is a headline from August in 2004. They're turning 7, but most of our grade 1s are lagging 2 or more years behind. And this is really, I think, what the outcome of those early experiences can be for many children. This is a more recent one from the Mail and Guardian. It comes from Sebas van der Berg and Nick Spall's team at Stellenbosch University, economists who are articulating what long of us in education have known for many years, that the patterns of inequality in South Africa are largely in place by the age of 8. A number of years ago, a group of us got together and tried to understand how we could help to change these inequalities when children begin school. We were all educationists. We'd had experience of how children learn to read and write, and we started thinking, where are the opportunities for parents to get more involved? Who's inviting these? Who's empowering parents to get involved in their children's learning? How can we use our grade, our year, to make sure that school is not directed to those already know, that we have more children who begin school with the right foundations in place? And what sort of compensatory support or early interventions were available for children who didn't begin school with the required foundations in place? Over the last 10 years, our organization has developed programs, resources with a focus on 3 areas. We work with parents of children aged 4 to 8 years. We work through volunteers to support children in grade R and 1. And in the last 3 years, we've also been supporting grade R teachers with a very, very specific focus on building early language and literacy and building foundations for learning to read and write at school. In a typical school where we work, this is my colleague Bridget Comrie, she will run workshops training teachers who then facilitate workshops for parents at their school. Parents attend a series of workshops over 7 weeks where they learn how to do informal learning at home, reading stories, playing games, telling stories if you haven't got books or you're not literate, talking to your child, investing time in early learning, and above everything else, a shift in attitude around the role of parents in preparing children for school. If parents attend 5 out of the 7 sessions of the training, they receive a certificate. And these are some of the prize givings at our schools in the Cape Town area. Some of these parents want to get more involved, and so our next step is to train some of these parents to become volunteers at their children's school. So in addition to learning how to support their own children at home, and often to support children in the neighboring street or the children of people in their family, they'll now come to school once a week. We provide training and resources for the volunteers, and then they work with children, 1 volunteer to 2 children. We also have a number of volunteers from outside local communities coming in who want to give back. The aim of this really is to make sure that grade 1 children who begin school already far behind, there's an opportunity to close the gaps early for them rather than waiting and to remediate their difficulties with reading. In addition to the work with parents and with volunteers at schools, we also run training for grade R teachers with a focus on building their knowledge of how to support language and literacy. through storytelling, through games and activities. We encourage teachers to have we encourage best practice around how to build language and literacy in classrooms. Here's some children making little books, and here's a little boy in grade R reading, really telling his story, but he's got lots of concepts about print and understanding. It's again based on resources that have been designed specifically to be relevant for children in these contexts. These are the children's representations of the Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I think really Camilla urged us to do a short brief of what we do and now what we've learned. And I think the learnings are many, and as I started, I just kept sort of adding to the list. Some are quite practical. I think one of the key things is that when we started out, we realized that most of the knowledge about how children learn to read and write has been held by the Departments of Education, by schools and by teachers, and that most parents in South Africa have been disempowered and are on the fringe of that learning. We wanted to share that knowledge with parents, with volunteers, with people who don't normally have access to that sort of information. And I think we've been overwhelmed by the response of parents and volunteers who are so grateful that they're being included in this process. At one of the schools recently, the volunteers, the parents presented the principal with a big bouquet of flowers at the prize giving. And the principal was quite taken aback and said, you know, what have I done really? The principal had allowed us to do the program at the school. And the parents just said, well, you brought this to our school and you've given us this. And I think it was really a reflection of how grateful parents are to be included and to have these kind of courses available to them. We've also seen how this has transformed women's lives, and that's led to more and more growth and learning. This is a quote from one of our parents. And how parents have then gone on to study to be ECD teachers or become teaching assistants at school. So I think really we've got untapped potential in terms of the parents and volunteers and the women in our communities. I think we need to recognize and celebrate the role of parents. This is a prize giving at one of the schools where the school laid out a buffet supper. The husbands of most of the women who'd come to the course were mums. The husbands were invited. The local imam was invited. The principals, the district officials were invited, really to say we value what you've invested, the time you've invested, and how you're going to improve the lives of your children. Another prize giving where the parents were given graduation gowns. I think we need to say that this work doesn't need to happen only in schools. It's happening in preschools and community education centres. It's happening in libraries. This is a program in Masiphumelele Library, which is run by two women from the community with support from a facilitator. So this needs to be more broad than just a school-based intervention. I think the other part of our work is that this is about improving language and literacy, but it's so much more than that. It's about improving relationships between parents and children. It's about the bond between a parent and child. It's about investing time. And it's not that parents didn't want to. I think they just didn't realize. So many of our parents say, well, my child is well fed. They're at the best school I can take them to. And we've got, I look after them. But this aspect of time and input into the relationship was key. The relationship between our volunteers and our children, these are at-risk children. Often there's no support for them. There's no one who takes the time to say to them, well done, you're doing fantastically. Let me help you and let me hear your story. We feel there's an incredibly big need still for compensatory support and will be going forward. Obviously, we need to improve the quality of teaching in the foundation phase, but it's not going to be enough. In big classes where children are coming in with such a backlog, we need individualized support. And through our volunteer-based programs, this is at one of our schools, we've got 10 volunteers working with about 40 kids in the morning. So we're reaching a large number of children that learning support teachers can't access with very high quality intervention and support. We need to make learning fun. We need to make learning to read an enjoyable experience. In our home, we've never said to our children, now we're going to do flashcards and reading and writing. Learning is fun. It's for a purpose. We need to write a letter to our grandpa, so we sit and we put that down together. We're playing I Spy in the car. I don't think our children have ever realized that they're learning to read and write. It's been fun, and that's what we need to bring back, that magic of that for young children. And key to making it fun is materials. Our homes, our preschools, our grade R classrooms are so under-resourced in terms of really high-quality materials for teaching young children. And young children need stuff. They can't learn without stuff. And so one of the key aspects of our work over the last 10 years is developing programs, but also resources, games, activities that are local, that have pictures that children can relate to, that have been designed with our own children and our context in mind. I think, together with this materials was just really acknowledging that grade R teachers are very important because we're giving them really valuable resources. So many of our grade R teachers are overwhelmed because they they're often at the bottom of the pile in a primary school. Everyone's focusing on the grade 3s and the grade 6s, and grade R's sort of out there. Their classrooms are normally far away from her. So now to come to a workshop and get a fantastic pack of resources. This is a quote from one of our teachers. We say no one else would have given it to us. We're not really on the agenda. And one of the teachers recounted a story where one of the little boys in her class, she'd come back from a workshop and was doing a story, and they've lovely picture cutouts and stories for the children. And she said, please could you take a picture of the nice lady who's given you these things so we can see who she is, because the children were so grateful as well. And the teachers often tell the children, we're going to a workshop today, so tomorrow I'll have a new story for you. So this is very much part of our work. I think also we're seeing that we can close those gaps, not through broad-based training, but through very focused skills development with grade R teachers. With practical workshops, teachers don't need to be told more of what to do, they need the how. We work with teachers over 6 months. We see them once a month. A big part of their training is reflecting on their practice, sharing with each other. This has worked. Did you know this is what I did? So a lot of our sessions towards the end of our training are actually led by the teachers themselves, where they're sharing good practice and seeing, they bring their resources to the workshop. It's not a one-off workshop and then the teachers are left. So we see the teachers over 6 months, once a month for an hour. So it's not a high investment of time, but it's that progression and the development of skills through practice and over time. I think one of the key aspects of our work is that we're trying to build capacity within schools. We're not going to schools to deliver programs for schools. In this picture, you'll see it's a very small group of parents at one of the schools, and the 2 people without certificates are the grade R teachers at the school, grade R1 teachers who've actually facilitated the program at their school. We've trained them as facilitators, but this becomes a program that the school can run every year. They don't have to ask us to come in and do it for them. And so we mentor them, but it's actually their program. And you'll also see the principal at the prize giving for the parents, and this for us has been key, is that we're getting buy-in from leadership principals. This is another prize giving where you'll see the curriculum advisor from the local education, from the circuit team there. We often have the circuit team leaders come into our prize giving, speaking to parents and acknowledging their role. This has to be led, I mean, the schools where this is working is we've got leadership who believe in the role of parents and who invest time in this. When we first speak to principals, there's often a sigh of sort of, oh, we've got so much to do. Now you want us to run workshops for parents as well. Is that really our job? When principals, I think, start seeing the value of this investment, and it's not a quick fix, but over time, how this can really change things. I think this is for us this is from one of the circuit team leaders in District South where we're working. And I think she makes such important points about the value of this kind of work. When we started, we were working in 3 or 4 schools locally. We now work in 20 to 30 schools in Metro South Education District, building each year in terms of growing the work geographically around a new circuit within the district. And this has been key to the growth of our work. We have the buy-in and support of the district in terms of recruiting and selecting schools, in terms of visiting schools, putting this on the school's year planner, making it part of what schools do, which has not always been their traditional role. I think just the last learning which I'd like to share, or last 2 learnings I'd like to share. The one is that this work would not have been possible without visionary funders who've seen the value of work outside of the school context, particularly D.D. Murray Trust, who is one of the key, are driving this idea that learning to read and write doesn't start when we get to school, that we've got to invest in early childhood education, we've got to invest in families and parents. And so I think that's been a key aspect of the success of our work, is really having funders who believed that actually running workshops for parents, getting volunteers on board is very important work. The last thing I need to say is that obviously this is we work in the Western Cape and the Eastern Cape, and we've got pockets of other clusters of school where we're driving this, where we're growing this program. We're also trying to develop a model that's replicable and that we can build capacity in other areas and grow it. But this cannot happen unless we've got an enabling policy environment. And I think our message from government, from reports coming out of governments and documents even out of ECD, is still not one of understanding the links between ECD and school. I'm often at conferences where I'm in a school-based room, but I also feel I need to be in an ECD room. And you'll see I've been moving between these 2 rooms here. Because in essence, although we, as an organization, we started working in schools, the more we do this work, the more we're working down. And at the moment, we're working on resources for birth to 4. We've just got a new birth to 4 curriculum which has come out. And in the curriculum, it says that children should only be taught to learn to read in grade 1. For all the steps forward we're taking steps back by giving teachers those messages. When the NEDI report came out, it was focused on foundation phase. There's no mention of grade R, and there's also no understanding what those children came into school knowing. And unless we start seeing links between what's happening in ECD in families, we're not going to change the results, I think. And although we're looking for solutions, we haven't even started asking the right questions. And my sort of vision is that other children have the opportunities that mine have had, and that they'll begin school with foundations that enable them to reach their potential.
Thank you.